Let's introduce two types of errors in hypothesis test. In a criminal trial, the defendant is either innocent or guilty. And usually you don't prosecute the people unless you believe these people is guilty, right? So therefore, H1 oftentimes contains what you want to prove. So therefore, we put defendant is guilty in H1, something the prosecutor wants to prove. Now HO is the defendant is innocent. Now jury will deliver a guilty verdict. That means rejecting HO, or innocent verdict. That means fail to reject HO. So here we can summarize the situation into this two-way table, the so-called, because it's two rows horizontally and two columns vertically. So here the truth can be the defendant is innocent or guilty, and the decision can be reject HO, that means guilty verdict, or fail to reject HO, innocent verdict. Now, if this case happens, in other words, the defendant is innocent, but the jury deliver a guilty verdict. So this actually is an error, is that right? So this is an error. This error is pretty serious. We try to avoid that. So this is so-called a type 1 error. So put it in another way, type 1 error means you conclude H1, that means you reject HO, when the HO is actually true. So this is type 1 error. We try to control this type of error, so this type of error is denoted by alpha, which is the significance level. That's why we want to make this as small as possible. All right. Now, if the defendant is guilty and the jury delivers guilty verdicts, that means rejects HO. This is a correct decision, so nothing wrong with that. That's correct. Now, if the defendant is innocent and the decision of jury is fail to reject HO, that means you fail to reject HO. That means announce the defendant is innocent. So this is another correct decision. And last one, the defendant is actually guilty, but there's no enough evidence for the jury to deliver a guilty verdict. In this case, the decision is failed to reject HO, which means jury announced that defendant is innocent. So this is another error. Well, compare these two types of error. People believe this is more serious. So therefore, they oftentimes want to control this one. Unfortunately, you cannot control both. If you want to make this small, the type 1 error small, and this type of error, which we call type 2 error, will be increased. So we just need to find a balance point right there. Now, so here's the after the discussion, hopefully you recognize these two types of errors. The type 1 is you reject HO when HO is true. The type 2 is you fail to reject HO when HO is actually false. So we denote it as beta. Okay. Now let's so the book has a pretty good phrase to help you memorize type 1, type 2. So type 1 says reject true no. That means the no is true, you're rejecting it. Your conclusion is rejecting it. So routine for fun. Routine is rejecting true no. Okay, this is type 1. For fun is fail to reject false no. The no hypothesis is false, but you fail to reject this no hypothesis. So this is the type 2 error. Now finally, we are gonna let's exercise how to write type 1 and type 2 error. Let's take a look at this example here. A new drug and a standard drug are used to treat a particular disease. Results are compared, and those hypotheses are here. HO means no difference, right? So that means it's as effective as, so no difference. H1 means the new drug is more effective than the standard drug. So let's identify the type 1 error. Type 1 error, if you can recall, it says reject true no. Routine for fun, the routine. Reject true no. That means you're rejecting HO, you're concluding H1. So here's how I would phrase the type 1. You're concluding H1, you're going to say new drug is more effective when actually the HO is true. HO means they're the same, when actually they are the same, right? They are the same. So this is how I would write the type 1 error. Okay. Now type 2 error is fail to refuse the false no. So the HO is not true, but you fail to reject HO. That means you conclude HO when H1 is actually true. So that means you conclude new drug is as effective as the standard one, standard drug. So that's what you conclude. You conclude HO, so copy HO down. When in fact, and actually, in fact, or actually, the new is more effective. The new drug is more effective. So now here's the trick when I write it. When you have the type 1 error, you reject the true no. So that means you conclude H1. So copy H1 down here. Copy H1. Just copy the whole sentence. When actually, copy down HO, okay? When actually HO is true. Now, type 2 error is you fail to reject false no. So in other words, you conclude HO, you fail to reject false no, you fail to reject. So write down the HO when actually H1 is true, because when H1 is true, sorry about that. I really meant that. So fail to reject false no. So that's the how I would phrase both type 1 and type 2 error.